You got him. Good shot, kid. You got him.
Maybe, just maybe, this is the series of videos that's really my calling. Let's just look at the brass facts, shall we? This is a channel that mostly deals with late 90s, early noughties newfangled retro stuff, right? It's the cutting edge of old shit, so to speak. The previous batch of popular retro reviewers may have largely grown up with the NES, the SNES, the Mega Drive and all that lot, but my teenage years were powered by PlayStation, and really that's my home court above everything else. There's also all that social context stuff I like to put in everywhere that everybody just loves so much, how everything connects to everything else, and usually everything leads back to this. Gee, sometimes people even get annoyed because I mention Grand Theft Auto so much. It was the most important series of games of my generation and it's remained there. It's hard not to mention it. So, what's the solution? There is only one solution, and that's to cover it. This may well be what 2.5 years worth of videos has built up to. Not Tomb Raider, not Final Fantasy VII, not all those licensed games. It's GTA. The story of how a crude little game by a Scottish developer previously famed for cutesy animals committing suicide turned into gaming's biggest juggernaut. GTA isn't just the flag bearer of gaming, GTA is gaming, in a way, good or bad. The arrival of a new GTA represents the start or the end of an epoch, a State of the Union address. This is where we're at. And of course they tend to sell quite a lot too. So there's only one place to start, isn't there? And there's a hell of a lot to go through. This is the first video of 6, and it begins with those first steps, those crude little top-down games that Blade tried to ban. Here's something you might not know first off. Grand Theft Auto actually started life as an Amiga title. Yeah, it's true. The first stabs at developing GTA were on an Amiga, all the way back in 1996. However, yeah, the Amiga was kinda dead by this point. It wasn't too long before David Jones, head of DMA design, switched development of the game over to PC. And geez, just think of the alternate history. What if Grand Theft Auto had been released on the Amiga? It would have been a very late period title, reviewed by the still existent Amiga magazines and all that, at best enjoyed by those who are still sticking with the Amiga back then, and chances are that would have been it. It might not even have been called Grand Theft Auto. At this point the game was simply known as Race and Chase. Just think of how different gaming would have been. But that didn't happen. It was time to move on. Around the same time, DMA were working on a game for what was then known as the Ultra 64 called Body Harvest. You play as a soldier tasked with defending humanity from aliens. You can jump into any vehicle in the area, use a variety of weapons and, well, any human who happens to get in the way is just shit out of luck, aren't they? Body Harvest was supposed to be one of what would soon be the Nintendo 64's launch titles. However, Nintendo, as they do, got quite icky over the game's violent content and demanded changes. In the end, Body Harvest didn't come out until 1998, and although it received good notices at the time, nobody really remembers it today. The open-ended and bloody nature of the game stuck with David Jones though, and it went into further developing what was still then known as Race and Chase. The game was going well, but it needed someone to release it. And this is where perhaps the two names most associated with the whole franchise come in. Dan and Sam Houser, heads of BMG Interactive, a then struggling wing of the BMG empire famed for various games. Jones pitched Race and Chase to them, and they fell in love immediately. It may not have been much of a looker, but the gameplay was brand new, completely open-ended, you could do whatever you want, situations could develop all of a sudden without the player's influence and, well yeah, those bystanders were still just shit out of luck, weren't they? The open world concept hadn't been embraced in such a way since Elite, so long ago. They thought it was awesome. Still, the title needed a bit more style. And so, after a couple of years more development, Grand Theft Auto hit the shelves, coming out for the PC in October 1997. And well, the response was immediate. Politicians, newspapers and the like were already lining up to condemn this game. After 5 solid years of Night Trap, Mortal Kombat, Doom and Carmageddon, this must have felt like the pinnacle, the new grand dame of bad taste, here to corrupt all of our children. And well, that's exactly what they wanted you to think. A large part of GTA's success and notoriety before even a single game had left store shelves was down to noted PR guru and sex pest Max Clifford. Most notable for dealing with the fallout of all kinds of scandal for various C-list UK media celebs, noted PR guru and sex pest Max Clifford's job was to create scandal, which naturally he achieved with aplomb, planting many a lurid article in the tabloids, inspiring head-shaking think pieces in the broadsheets, all sorts. The Streisand effect often gets talked about a lot, annoyingly so in fact, but what DMA, BMG and noted PR guru and sex pest Max Clifford essentially did was weaponise the Streisand effect, purposefully creating all the controversy GTA needed. And hoo boy did it work. It may not have been 3D, it may have looked like shit, but it sold and sold big, eventually getting ported to the PlayStation in 1998 where it sold even more. And needless to say, a lot of people who bought it weren't exactly of legal age. GTA was the talk of the yard in 98, seriously. You pretty much had to have it, you know? That was just kinda the way it was. But all that aside, what exactly was the game even? Old top-down GTA is a wholly different beast from what the series would become. The big stories and the characters and all that, you ain't gonna find any of it here. All you'll find are 6 levels spread over 3 maps with names that would become famous: Liberty City, San Andreas and Vice City. The oh so simple way to progress in GTA is, in the classic arcade style, to score points. Once you make a couple of million points, you can finish the level. The main way to do this is by going to payphones and taking various jobs from whoever your boss is, normally of the go somewhere and shoot something variety, using the wide variety of weapons at your disposal. Pistols, machine guns, a flamethrower, a rocket launcher, shit like that. You can also get jobs from finding various cars on the map. These can be trickier to get as the jobs come up on your pager, yeah, your pager, and you have to be quick to write down, the location you need to go to, but they're usually quite lucrative. The other way to gain points is simple: create mayhem. Blow up cars, get in chases with the cops, get the army in, go on kill frenzies, one over Hare Krishnas, shit like that. The longer you survive, the easier it becomes. The game uses a multiplier system that'll bump your score up in no time. And, well, that's pretty much it as far as structure goes. It's very, very loose. The only real colour in the world is colourful language, of which there's naturally a lot. Virtually every job description comes with a side order of shits and fucks. It's just you and the world. And it was certainly kind of fun, at least for a little while. Still, the original GTA was far from perfect, and it hasn't exactly aged well, especially if you're used to some of the advances from the 3D games, such as, I don't know, an in-game map. Just getting somewhere can be kinda hard with only a pointer for company. The cities aren't exactly small after all. When playing this game, it's pretty much required to have the map from the game's box to hand. Get it, learn your shit, and figure out where you are. It's kind of a pain, especially in a pinch. Also, when it comes to missions, GTA is, as it turns out, very hard. If you don't have body armour on, you die from a single shot. Even the most basic of all goons can kill you. And you only get one shot at passing a mission. If you fail them, you don't get to try again. It's not a requirement to pass all the missions to get the points, but failing a load of them can make getting those points a serious slog of doing the same thing over and over again. Just causing mayhem isn't really enough to make the gameplay interesting for long periods. The one-hit thing doesn't exactly help, but the top-down thing really makes shooting a pain in general. There's barely any way to tell where your shots are gonna go, and frankly the ugly nature of the graphics means you can barely see the bullets. It's white on frickin' off-white most of the time, and it's near impossible to dodge. Also, the PlayStation version's controls are rather iffy, in that you have to press a button to go forwards and backwards even when you're on foot, which is weird as hell to be honest. So in the end, everything does become a bit of a grind and the game does become pretty old. The best thing about it really is driving, particularly with the radio for company and the original game's classic theme song, Joyride. And even that can kinda be a twitchy mess. A lot of the game just doesn't work, to be honest. It's an arcade-style game that ends up being way too long for its own good. At the time it did have something for all of us immature little shits, but alas the original GTA has aged about as badly as a CDI game. But the impact it made was undeniable. The first GTA opened up Pandora's box, and everything else was always going to follow on from there. The original game was even successful enough for an expansion to come out on the frickin' PlayStation. The brand new Lockstock inspired fad for British gangsters and the like resulted in GTA London 1969, with added maps, Union Jacks, shooters, and nice ones.
Nice one, brother!
I said, nice, bruv!
Fucking nice one, brother!
Nice one, bruv!
The swinning London setting and the happening numbers on the radio do actually give the game a bit of charm that the original game kind of lacks, but under the hood it's still basically the exact same game with none of the original's flaws fixed in any way. But it could satisfy the need for a little bit of violence, I guess, if you could really just get that from nowhere else except the original Grand Theft Auto. A smaller freeware PC expansion, London 1961, added a couple more maps as well as an online deathmatch multiplayer mode. So the formula that would define the series was established from the beginning. Using online and expansions were always the order of the day. But naturally, all eyes were going to be on the game's sequel. The potential was definitely there for something after all. There would be a few bumps in the road though. Somewhere around 1998 and 1999, DMA ended up getting sold to Gremlin. Then Gremlin ended up getting sold to Infogrames, who took over DMA. Also, BMG would sell their interactive wing to Take-Two Interactive, who would rename it Rockstar Games. Anyway, in the midst of all this, the hype train for GTA 2 started for the game's release in September of 1999. There was even a big nigh on 10-minute live-action movie made to accompany the game's release, featuring the apparent hero of the piece, a guy by the name of Claude Speed, played by that one bloke who's in every bloody soapy drama thing ever. Anyway, it's all big and flashy and clubbed to death and Doom's Night and Guy Ritchie'd out the fucking arse, you know? It's what Danny Dyer sees when he comes. And of course there was the same controversy as ever, although perhaps a bit more muted this time, seeing as people generally knew what to expect out of GTA by this point, and it obviously wasn't going to be pulling any of those punches. And, amidst all of this, there was the game. GTA 2's premise is really much the same as the first. You have a big map to play with, and you have to score a set amount of points to advance. Still the same top-down view, still the same job system, and still the same mayhem. But that's not all. There have been quite a few additions. The main addition is that every map features 3 separate gangs and a nascent respect system. You can only do a gang's jobs if they like you. You get gangs to like you by killing members of the gang they're rivaled with, which naturally serves to piss that gang off and cause them to attack you on sight. So there's a bit of balance in play with sucking up to one gang but not too much, as you don't want to make the missions a total pain by annoying everyone else and getting shot at with heavy weapons from all directions. Thankfully the game also features a health system. Unless you get caught in an explosion or fried by a flamethrower, you no longer die in one hit, which softens the blow a little. It's still not easy at all, but you have a bit more of a chance in a firefight as long as you play smart. The graphics were also a lot less crude this time out. There's more than 8 colours involved. It even has a subtle day and night system. For a top-down game from 1999 it looks quite good. You can actually see the bullets this time out as well. Actually, GTA 2's look and feel is kinda unique in that it's the only game in the series to be set in the near future, 2012 in fact. Everything's a bit more cleaner, particularly when you're dealing with the Zaibatsu Corporation, who operate in all the game's maps and come across as the world's overlords in a way. The main areas for the other gangs also have a little bit more personality than anything we saw in the maps of the original GTA. It's kinda weird as the series hasn't ever had anything resembling a futuristic feel since, but it kinda works. On the whole, yeah, GTA 2 is a lot better than the original. It holds up so much better today, that's for sure. It's still kind of hard to actually aim with any precision, meaning you really need to have a machine gun or something you can spray and pray with in order to have a good shot at completing missions. You do still have to use X to move forward, but the controls are mapped somewhat similarly to what GTA is now despite that. And believe it or not, firing is even mapped to the shoulder button, which is kind of the standard these days. And there's still no in-game map. You're going to have to become very familiar with the map from the box, at least until you learn where you're going. But what's good is still very good, or even better. Driving's made much more pleasing by the game's newfound smoothness, and there's more of an effort to make the world feel alive, particularly with the game's radio stations, which feature the series' first little stabs at that old satire it's oh so famous for. Talking about that later. Other new additions are also a godsend. You can now have another stab at missions you fail, and you can save your progress mid-level with the use of the game's churches. This makes the game so much friendlier to short bursts of play. There is only 3 maps, which may seem like nothing, but all 3 are absolutely chock full of jobs and will take a couple of hours to complete at least. There may not be a pager anymore with extra jobs in cars that you have to find, but there's still all manner of kill frenzies and parties of Elvises? Elvi? Anyway, you can send those guys to the Heartbreak Hotel for a nice bonus. On the whole, I really like Grand Theft Auto 2 and always have. When it comes to the 2 classic top-down games in the series, there's really no contest between this and the original. The sequel is so much better in every way and makes good on the potential that the original game showed. However, the critical and commercial reception for GTA 2 was actually quite mixed. People were quite disappointed by the game at the time, and after the original game had made so much of a splash, this one was kind of regarded as a bit of a squib. Why was that? Well, the general consensus was that this top-down 2D shit was just so unfashionable now. The year was 1999, and apparently 2D games were dead. Who wants to play this old Mega Drive type looking shit? We want games in 3D, goddammit! And people, critics, even fans and the like said as much. In retrospect, this does come across as very unfair to the game indeed. Bluntly put, there is no way at all that the PS1 would have been able to handle a game that was anything like what the series would become. So perhaps, faced with the choice of making a 3D game that would be at best janky as all hell and nothing that the PS1 could handle at all, and at worst an absolute single frame per second broken shit show, or just going out there and making another top-down game that was actually good and refined and improved on the original, DMA chose the latter option. But prejudices against 2D games at the time meant that it wasn't exactly received well. This choice resulted in some damage to the series in the short term, but in the long term it was a necessary move for the quality of the series, and it set out some ground rules, that DMA weren't going to take this series into 3D until the time was right, and that time was not going to come until the next generation was here. In short, they weren't just going to release any old shit. Still, it set the stage for some other games to come that did do the open world thing in 3D, even if they weren't quite as full-featured as the top-down GTA was. Reflections Driver was perhaps the prime example, a game that set you off in the open world and revelled in a whole load of classic 70s style car chasers. If you wanted to spend an inordinate amount of time recreating chases from the French Connection and Bullet and what have you, then this was the game for you. Well, so long as you could get past the bloody tutorial mission, that is. No getting out of the car, but Driver and its sequel, where you actually could get out of the car, gave GTA a big competitor that, at this current moment, was ahead on points in the eyes of most people. And of course there was more upheaval going on. Infogrames eventually decided to sell DMA Design to Take-Two Interactive, and so the Housers now had the studio under their wing. At this point David Jones decided to leave the table, albeit giving the Housers his blessing on the way out. He formed a studio called Real-Time Worlds, and they would go on to make their own waves in the world of sandboxing with this particularly fantastic game. Still, we are a long ways from Crackdown. We're still only in 2000 in fact. So, to wrap all of this up, DMA decided to move from their original home of Dundee to Edinburgh, and eventually their name was changed. DMA Design would become Rockstar North, and the oh-so-famous branding would first appear on the Dreamcast's port of GTA 2. Around this time, well, 1998 actually, they made a little game for the Nintendo 64 called Space Station Silicon Valley, another quite well-received game at the time that isn't remembered so much now, but it was based around a fairly open-ended world in 3D with a fair bit of exploration and platforming involved. Combine Silicon Valley with Body Harvest, and maybe you get a rough idea of just what DMA eventually wanted to do. And finally, right now, they would get their chance. The PS2 was out, the stage was set, and the time was right. In 2001, it would be time for Grand Theft Auto to finally go 3D. However, we're not quite finished with this video yet. We're done with the 2 classic top-down games, but they wouldn't be the only time that the series went top-down. There'd be a couple of others to come in the ensuing years for Nintendo handheld systems. and they kinda don't really fit in anywhere else, taking place in a world that's a little out of step with the main series, and so we're gonna cover them here. I guess we have to start by quickly, and I really do mean quickly, looking at the Game Boy Color's ports of Grand Theft Auto and Grand Theft Auto 2. It's no mean feat at all that they're here on such a lightweight system, and for the most part, they're intact. But, well, yeah, they're quite awful. The first one features all the jobs and everything, but the driving is damn near impossible. It's utter agony to get anywhere. It does at least move quite smoothly, although this might just be because there's barely anything on the screen. And the unlistenable music doesn't exactly help either. So yeah, not very good. But, hold up, what about the second game? Holy shit, that's even worse. Laggy as all hell, the same hideous controls, uncontrollable driving, main character sprite that's identical to every other character, unhelpful directions now chucked into the corner. This makes the first game look good, and is one of the absolute worst ports of anything that I have ever played. Still, it does have this Game Boyified version of AC/DC's Back in Black. That's something. I mean, just listen. This is the greatest game ever. Please kill me now. Anyway, what's the lesson here? Just because you can squeeze a game down into a small system doesn't always mean that you should. Let's just move on very quickly, shall we? A much more considered effort would come in 2004 for the Game Boy Advance. This came out on the same day as GTA San Andreas and functions as a prequel to Grand Theft Auto 3, taking place in Liberty City a year before the events of that game. You even get some of that game's characters showing up, such as 8-Ball. You know, 8-Ball? Guy from the beginning? Anyway, he's there. It's okay. Naturally, the aims are different to the older games. There's now a story you've got to go through and everything, although it's not massively complex. The game looks much better than the first GTA and does a few little things that emulate the feel of the 3D games. Cars can flip over, weapons have a fair bit more impact, the camera actually zooms in and out depending on what you're doing, and so on. Yeah. It's certainly a hell of a lot better than the damn near unplayable Game Boy Color games, but that's not exactly a recommendation. The graphics for a start are incredibly crude, more like the first game when you just wish it would have tried to emulate the second. Perhaps the worst thing is that the game only runs at 20 frames per second. Understandable, but it's still so slow. It was at least a chance to play a bit of GTA on the go, and it's not actually hideous this time around. But to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this one, and these days you'd have to cut it a lot of slack to really have fun with it. A few years later, Rockstar would try again, with much better results. Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars for the DS is the best of all the top-down GTA games. Truthfully, it and GTA 2 are the only ones that are worth playing. The game once again takes place in Liberty City, only this time it's GTA 4's much sleeker rendition, and it actually features a full plot and set of characters that's worthy of merit to boot. Yeah, we've jumped a hell of a long way forward in the timeline. Of course, this game is a wholly different beast to any of the other top-down games. It does have a rotoscoped look about it that's oddly reminiscent of GTA 2, but the stage is totally different. This may be a handheld game, but it's still very much in line with the serious, king-of-the-world epic current GTA feel, and Rockstar weren't going to pull any punches just because it's the Nintendo DS now. There's small considerations that make the top-down game so much easier to play on a handheld than it once was, like cars naturally aligning themselves to the road, or the much-needed addition of a lock-on system. And the DS's touchscreen capabilities used to the fullest, not just as an easy way to access the menus and the PDA, but for little sequences here and there, things like hotwiring a car or planting bugs and whatnot. It could be gimmicky, but it actually does kind of work. And the control in general is far better than the top-down games of old. There's so much more stuff to do, a whole heap of side missions, swear words in a Nintendo game, and perhaps most amazing of all, the scope and bustle of GTA 4's rendition of Liberty City doesn't seem to have lost anything in translation to the Nintendo DS. Rockstar seriously managed to pull a ridiculous amount out of such a little system here, going several extra miles when honestly, it probably didn't need to. The Nintendo DS may well be, in my view, the greatest handheld system ever made bar none. But that doesn't mean it didn't pay host to all different kinds of shovelware, including hilariously awful renditions of bigger console games fobbed off by AAA companies to tiny teams and shat out in what appeared to be under a minute flat. Rockstar could have easily done that. GTA Chinatown Wars is one of the few games that shows just what you could do with the DS if you actually tried. It's a great game, a handheld GTA that packs damn near as big a punch as the multi-million-dollar Epic 4 games do. Hell, I'd probably go so far as to say that it's a hell of a lot more fun than GTA 4 itself was. But we'll get to that later. Much later. For now though, we're done with looking at the top-down GTA games. In the second part, the PlayStation 2 comes into the picture, and we see just what happens when you take a crude open-world top-down game set in a fictional city where you can shoot a whole bunch of things, and you make it 3D. It's not much of a spoiler to say that the results were kinda positive. Anyway, that's next time, so I shall see you all later. Bye!